Officer Rodriguez looked like he'd rather be anywhere else as Karen marched across the street, her heels clicking against the asphalt with military precision. Behind him, his partner Officer Chen was already shaking his head at whatever Tom Henderson was explaining. "Officers, thank you for coming so quickly," Karen announced, brandishing her folder like a weapon. "As HOA president, I have documented evidence of multiple violations." "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez interrupted gently, "we've already explained to Mr. Henderson that removing a pool from his own property isn't illegal." Karen's eye twitched. "But it is illegal without proper HOA approval. Section 12.4 clearly states." "Karen, for crying out loud." Tom Henderson's voice carried across his yard. "I lost my job 3 months ago. I can't afford to maintain a pool." The admission hit the small crowd of gathering neighbors like a confession. Karen felt a momentary flicker of something, sympathy. No, determination. Rules were rules, regardless of personal circumstances. Financial hardship doesn't excuse breaking community standards. "Tom," she called back, her voice carrying the authority of 2 decades in power, "you should have come to the architectural committee. We could have worked something out." "Like what?" Tom's laugh was bitter. "You made the Johnsons repaint their house 3 times because the beige was too warm-toned. You think you'd approve pool removal?" The neighbors were choosing sides now. Karen could see it in their faces. The Patels nodded sympathetically at Tom. The Rodriguezes, not the officer, the family from Maple Street, whispered among themselves. Old Mrs. Chen from the corner house looked positively mutinous. "Tom's right," called out Jessica Patel. "Karen, you made us tear down our kid's treehouse because it was 6 inches too tall. Community standards exist for a reason." Karen's voice rose above the murmurs. "Property values. Screw property values." Tom Henderson was getting red in the face now. "Some of us are trying to keep our actual houses." Officer Rodriguez stepped between them. "Folks, this seems like a civil matter. HOA disputes need to be handled through your community board or the courts." But Karen wasn't backing down. Not after 23 years of perfect community management. Not when her authority was being questioned in front of half the neighborhood. "Officers, I want to file a formal complaint about the unauthorized excavation," she declared. "And I'm calling the city about unpermitted construction activities." "Karen," Martha's voice held a warning tone. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." "No, Martha. Everyone here needs to understand what happens when we ignore community standards." Karen turned to address the growing crowd. "Today it's an unauthorized pool removal. Tomorrow it's purple houses and RV parking, and who knows what else." Tom Henderson stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and humiliation. "You know what, Karen? I'm glad I took out that pool. And you know what else? I'm not reapplying for approval. It's gone, it's staying gone, and there's nothing you can do about it." The crowd erupted in murmurs. Some neighbors applauded. Others looked shocked at the direct defiance of Karen's authority. Karen felt something shift inside her chest. In 23 years, no one had ever openly challenged her like this. No one had ever stood in front of the entire neighborhood and told her there was nothing she could do. "We'll see about that, Tom," she said quietly. But her voice carried across the yard. "We'll just see about that." As the police cars drove away and the crowd dispersed, Karen stood in Tom's driveway, staring at the filled-in space where the pool had been. Martha tugged at her elbow. "Karen, come on, let's go home." But Karen was already planning her next move. If Tom Henderson thought this was over, he was about to learn just how wrong he could be. The war for Willowbrook Estates had officially begun. Karen Whitfield's morning coffee sprayed across her pristine granite countertop as she spotted the catastrophe through her kitchen window. Where yesterday stood the Hendersons' perfectly acceptable above-ground pool, complete with the required safety fence and proper setback from property lines, now gaped a muddy crater like a fresh grave. "Wait he in the name of," her shriek rattled the china in her display cabinet. 23 years as Willowbrook Estates' HOA president had prepared her for many battles. Unauthorized lawn gnomes, improper mailbox colors, the Great Christmas Light Rebellion of 2019. But this was war. She speed-dialed Martha, her vice president and closest ally in the neighborhood watch network. "Martha, get over here now. The Hendersons have violated Section 12.4 of the Architectural Guidelines." "Which one is that again?" Martha's voice crackled through the phone. "Pool removal without HOA approval." Karen's voice pitched higher with each word. They needed a permit, a committee review, a 30-day notice period. Through her binoculars, standard equipment for any serious HOA president, Karen watched Tom Henderson spreading fresh topsoil where his pool had been. The audacity! The man was whistling, actually whistling while committing what she considered a felony against community standards. By the time Martha arrived, Karen had already printed out 17 pages of relevant HOA documents, highlighted in 3 different colors. Her dining room table looked like a legal war room. "Now, I know Tom's been having money troubles since the divorce," Martha said carefully, accepting the coffee Karen thrust at her. "Maybe we cooled. Money troubles don't excuse flagrant violations of community standards." Karen's finger jabbed at paragraph 12.4e. Any substantial modification to outdoor amenities requires written approval from the Architectural Review Committee. "That's me, Martha. Me." What truly galled Karen wasn't just the rule violation, though that was unconscionable enough. It was the principle. She'd spent over 2 decades crafting Willowbrook Estates into the most pristine, valuable neighborhood in the county. Property values had increased 340% under her leadership. The waiting list for houses here stretched 6 months long. And now Tom Henderson thought he could just dig up his pool without so much as a text message. "I'm calling the police," Karen announced, reaching for her phone. Martha nearly choked on her coffee. "The police? Karen, maybe we should start with a friendly conversation. This is destruction of property values, Martha. This affects every homeowner in Willowbrook." Karen's perfectly manicured nails clicked against her phone screen. "Hello, yes. I need to report a violation of city ordinances and possible property damage." As she spoke to the dispatcher, Karen watched Tom Henderson emerge from his house with a bag of grass seed. The man actually waved at her window. Waved. Like he hadn't just committed the most egregious HOA violation in Willowbrook history. The dispatcher seemed confused. "Ma'am, removing a pool from your own property isn't typically a police matter. It is when it's done without proper permits and community approval." Karen's voice reached a pitch that made Martha wince. "This man is single-handedly destroying our neighborhood's integrity." By noon, 2 police cars sat in Tom Henderson's driveway, and Karen stood on her front porch in her best power suit, holding a thick folder of documentation. This was just the beginning. 3 days later, Karen's campaign began in earnest. She'd spent 72 hours researching every possible angle, every regulation, every legal precedent that could bring Tom Henderson to his knees. Her dining room had transformed into mission control, complete with property maps, city ordinances, and a detailed timeline of violations. The first strike came via certified mail, a formal notice of HOA violation with a $500 fine and a demand for immediate remediation. The second was a call to the city's Code Enforcement Division reporting suspicious excavation activities. The third was a letter to every homeowner in Willowbrook Estates, explaining how Tom's reckless disregard for community standards threatened their property values. "Karen, you're playing with fire," Martha warned during their Thursday coffee meeting. "Half the neighborhood is already on Tom's side. Half the neighborhood doesn't understand the bigger picture," Karen replied, adding another highlighted document to her growing pile. "I've maintained 340% property value growth, Martha. 340%. Do you know what that means for their retirement portfolios?" But as Karen walked her daily neighborhood inspection route that afternoon, she couldn't ignore the signs. The Patels had replaced their approved beige mailbox with an unauthorized black one. The Johnsons had planted flowers outside their designated planting zone. And was that? Yes, old Mrs. Chen was hanging wind chimes. Wind chimes. Section 8.3 explicitly prohibited excessive noise decorations. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back off, lady. Nobody likes the pool police." Karen's hands shook as she screenshotted the message. This was harassment. She'd added to her growing file of evidence that Tom Henderson's rebellion was corrupting the entire community. By Friday, Tom's response arrived via his own certified mail, a formal letter from a lawyer stating that the pool removal was legal, the property was properly restored, and any further harassment would result in legal action. Harassment. Karen shrieked at Martha over the phone. Enforcing community standards is harassment now. But doubt was creeping in. That evening, Karen stood at her kitchen window, staring at Tom's backyard. The grass was already starting to grow. It looked normal. Nice even. Like a regular backyard, where kids might play fetch with a dog or families might have barbecues. The thought disturbed her more than she cared to admit. Saturday morning brought Karen's masterstroke, an emergency HOA meeting to vote on enhanced enforcement measures for community violations. She'd spent all night crafting the agenda, complete with PowerPoint presentations about property values and community integrity. Only 12 of 37 homeowners showed up. "Where is everyone?" Karen demanded as Martha set up the folding chairs in the community center. "Karen, it's Saturday morning. People have lives." But the meeting proceeded anyway. Karen presented her case with charts, graphs, and financial projections. She showed pictures of Tom's violation from every angle. She quoted property law, HOA regulations, and community standards. Then Tom Henderson walked in. He looked tired, older somehow than he had just a week ago. But he wasn't backing down. "I'd like to address the community," he said quietly. Karen's first instinct was to refuse, but 12 pairs of eyes were watching her. "You have 3 minutes." Tom stood at the front of the room, his hands clasped behind his back. "I've lived in Willowbrook for 8 years. I've followed every rule, paid every fee, attended every meeting. I painted my house 3 times to get the right shade of beige. I replaced my roof because Karen said the shingles were too reflective. I spent $5,000 on approved landscaping." His voice grew stronger. "But I lost my job. My wife left, and I couldn't afford to maintain a pool anymore. So I removed it, legally, properly. And now I'm being harassed, fined, and threatened with legal action." The room was silent. "I'm not asking for special treatment," Tom continued. "I'm asking for basic human decency. And if that's too much to ask in Willowbrook Estates, then maybe this isn't the community I thought it was." When the vote came, it was 7-5 against Karen's enhanced enforcement measures. For the first time in 23 years, Karen Whitfield had lost. But as the meeting ended and neighbors filed out, many avoiding eye contact with her, Karen realized something that chilled her more than any defeat. Tom Henderson wasn't the real threat to Willowbrook Estates. She was.